Hello everyone, my name is Sick and today I thought I would try to do something new. I'm going to have an insider look at one of my more complex ArmA 3 missions. This one is it's called Operation Flaming Eagle. Right, as you can see I'm on Tanoa. This is one of the, I think this is the second mission that I made for Tanoa. And I put in about 25 hours of work into this one mission. This video is not going to be a tutorial, it is going to simply show you how I set everything up, and just to give you a bit of an idea of what a more complex mission might look like. As such, you might still learn a thing or two from this, and I'm going to look into the triggers and some of that stuff and explain what's going on there, but it is not a step-by-step tutorial. That said, you might still learn something, so it might still be interesting and educational. Alright, so we start off at the beach here, and there's a few different things going on, so I have some comments placed down as well to help myself to remind me what everything is. So this is the intro music. This will start right from the beginning, and it says play music, Sakura Short. It is a song from Red Orchestra 2 Rising Storm that I kind of used and cut short to make for like a nice little intro music for the jungle terrain here. Right, and then we have some radio music as well being played. So there's a few radios throughout this map, and they will play music in 3D. And one of the places that will play music is on the little encampment to the right here. And this is also something you might note, there will be spoilers in this mission, or in this video actually. If you watch this video and you have not played this mission yet, there will be spoilers. But that's something you should just be aware of. And then we have the HQ chat. So this is also the intro, where HQ starts talking and says, "Be aware, Sergeant, the Syndicate MG emplacement is situated directly to your left, it's an enemy encampment directly to your right," and blah blah blah. And then this stuff is something that allows you to change the time of day, and this is something that only the player can initiate. It is not going to happen on its own. It is, it's Radio Juliet, which is the activation for it. And with the text it shows, like, this is the comment that will show up once you open up the radio channels. It will say my side chat, the actual sound being played there, and then the screen is going to black out. In the second one, this is just a little bit more of a delay. Oh no, this is actually, it's not a delay, it's linked up to the skip time module. So this one will skip 12 hours. It will make sure it's night. Then the next one, it is going to fade out the black screen, so we can see the world again. And then finally, we'll have another little chat message. Now we'll have the advantage, blah blah blah. And this also, I have some code here that enables the different units in my squad to use their IR lasers that are on their weapons. Alright, so we have a bunch of those. Alright, and then most of these objectives are actually optional. So many of these triggers that you see here, they can be ignored, and the only thing that you really have to do to finish the mission is to attack the main objective here. So that's very simple. It is, let's see where it is. I think it's this one. Oh no, this is a trigger for the ammo factory. So I placed down this building and I dressed it up a little bit, and then I added this little trigger that once you go inside, you get into this little area and it will mention, like, oh, they must be making their own munitions here. Stuff like that. Little bits of flavor text, basically. The player might completely ignore this and never walk into this building and never trigger this trigger. But if he does walk inside, he'll have a little bit of extra flavor text and says, ah, look, they must be making their own stuff. Right, and then, let's see, the same thing goes on the other side here. This is also a little bit of flavor text, which you should see, because you have to clear out this building. So if you come into this little room here, it will say, leave the wounded man, he's not going to do anything. And this guy is actually a civilian, but I dressed him up in the Syndicate clothing. So he does not actually register as an independent faction member or a hostile at all. So this is just a guy dressed up as or dressed up to look like an enemy, but he's actually just a civilian, because that's the only way, because I have to kill everything or everyone inside of this area. Right? Ah, here it is. Final objective. It has like a radius of 200 by 200, and it checks for independent units not being present anymore, and when everybody is gone, we will have a little message, a little reply from HQ, and then finally we're calling for the end of the mission there. But this is the only objective that actually needs to be performed to finish the mission, and everything else is basically optional, but all of these optional objectives will give you benefits. So there's also one of these things here. There is a QRF, which is these three guys using this vehicle, and there is one side objective that will allow these guys to get into the Prowler and move over to where the optional objective is. But if they do not get ambushed and killed along the way, then another trigger is calling for them to return back to base. So this is everybody joining, different guys, different characters, and all of these things, they will be disabled if you perform various side objectives. So in the case of if the QRF gets killed, then this trigger will be deactivated, because if the QRF is already dead, then it doesn't make sense to have like a message that says the QRF knows you're there and they're heading back to base. Right, so there is a trigger somewhere else to one of the side objectives that will cancel out this trigger over here. Right, and then there's another thing going over here as well. When the QRF is dead, it will set or disable several trigger statements. Right, so the trigger called Blue 4 in base 2 gets disabled, and then Mine Road 1 gets disabled as well. And that's a quick look at the main base. And everything else are pretty basic side objectives, but there is a lot of interactivity here. And one of the most, or the best examples of that is over in Lai over here. So this is one of the side objectives that gives, I think this is one of the coolest things that you can do inside of this mission. So you could completely ignore this town, okay? But there is an optional objective for you to take it. And if you take it, you get two choices. And one of those choices is to simply blow up the comm station. And that will disable the enemy from calling in helicopter reinforcements once you reach the final objective, which is what you see over here. But you could also alternatively decide to leave one man behind, and if you leave that man behind, he will leave your squad, he will move inside the building, and he will listen in on the enemy communication, and he will tell you a lot of interesting things. Right, so this is some of the stuff that checks for like these three objectives, or triggers actually. They check to see if there are still enemy soldiers inside of the town of Lai. And once those are dead, this objective will be finished or ticked off, and it will allow you, or it will actually trigger a new task which says make your choice. Right, and then there's these little triggers. They are your two different options. So you can destroy the comms. So this trigger over here, or one of these triggers, it's going to check for the destruction of a certain item inside of the building. Let's see, that's not this one. Looks like it is this one. Comm destroyed? No, actually. Let's see. Leave man behind. One of these should be it, I think. Oh yeah, I was looking at the on activation. I should be looking at the condition. So there is like a little bag of grain inside of the building here, and that's the thing that is checked for being destroyed, and that will finish the objective. But there's two ways to finish this objective actually. So if you look, there's the create task, decide what to do with the radio outpost, and a little description that you have there. One of these says succeeded and is linked to the comms destruction triggers, and the other one should be, oh, that's assigned, let's see. The other succeeded one is linked to leaving a man behind, and leaving a man behind is done through a radio channel as well, radio alpha. Right, and then let's see, some triggers are disabled again because they are other optional objectives that are not going to be triggered anymore if you leave this man. Because every side objective, and this is where some other complexity comes in, every side objective has 2 possible activations. Okay, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, so you can leave one behind, or you can destroy the communication center. But once you destroy it, the enemy can no longer call in the helicopter. If you leave a man behind, they can call in the helicopter. But if you leave the man behind, he will lead you to all sorts of extra opportunities that you might not find without those hints. And those opportunities are things like finding a mortar emplacement that you can use to fire some shells at the final objective. There is a drugs cache that you can blow up, and if you do that, then they will call in the QRF to check it out, and you can ambush the QRF. And there is a sniper tower up on the hill over there, and so there's a bunch of different things. Right, but if you leave a man behind as well, you can go inside the building, and he will go and stand over here. So once this that guy gets into this little area, he will also tell you about something else, and that's that he sees a little box of painkillers over here. And the box of painkillers is interesting because this is a lengthy mission. There is a medic in your squad, but if he gets killed, there's no way of healing yourself again if you get shot. Like, you can kind of stop the bleeding, but there's no way to get back to full health without the medic. But these painkillers actually allow you to do that. And the way it works is I have this little game logic set up, which I've called healing logic, and it has a little script that I found somewhere. I did not write this myself. I found it somewhere on the forums, I believe. And it basically said, I checked for an item being picked up, and I added this little part myself, because this is something that I could still figure out on my own. It sets the player damage to 0, which means he is back to full health. But everything else about picking up items, this is something I found on the forums. Right? But if you use this code, it's going to check for an item being picked up, and then it's once that item is picked up, it will set the player damage to 0. And then whatever item you need to have picked up, or be able to be picked up, you need to put in this little line here. This add action heal. So this is actually the you can change the word heal into whatever you want, and it will show up in your action menu. But yeah, if you add this to whatever you want to be able to pick up, it can be picked up. It will trigger the game logic, and it will heal you. And there are a bunch of these painkillers scattered throughout the map, in most of the time in places where I have side objectives. Alright, so let's have a look. I mentioned that every side objective actually has 2 ways of being triggered, except for Lilai and the beach encampment over here, which is also a really basic one. These 2 objectives plus the sniper tower, they are there in your tasks right from the beginning. Like at the start of the mission, they will be started already. So these only have one activation. But if we go over to, let's see, the drugs cache over here, the drugs cache actually has 2 ways of being triggered, because the reason for that is because I gave the people an option in Lilai to leave a man behind or blow up the comm station. So if the player let me think about how I'm going to explain this. The player can get a hint from the guy he leaves behind about the drugs cache, right? He will find a hint. He will get a radio message, and it's like, "Boss, we found some radio chatter. We think there is a drugs cache in this and this location, blah blah blah," and then this objective will trigger. But if the player decides to blow up the comm station, the player might still, he will not get that hint, but he might still find this place, and he might still find the drugs cache. And in that case, he should still be able to use it and trigger the QRF to arrive. So that's the other activation, basically. So there is a few ways that you can do it. One of them is by simply walking inside of it. and I'm not entirely sure which trigger that is over here. Let's have a look. Smoke off and yeah, so jackpot. That's when you walk inside. If the player gets into the radius of this trigger, it will activate, and it says woohoo, jackpot, and it will activate the next objective, which is destroy the cache of drugs, which is optional, and then you can blow it up and it will activate and finish off the mission. So set task state succeeded. That's different ways to do it. So these are both of these triggers, they check for the drugs cache to be destroyed, but each only activates or finishes one of the objectives that are being triggered, right? So this is one of the, like, the jackpot objective over here. It is not going to get triggered when the player walks inside, when the player leaves someone behind in Lili, because I deactivated that. It doesn't need to trigger the same objective 2 times. So if the player leaves someone behind in Lili, then one of these triggers gets deactivated, so that doesn't happen anymore, and you only get one objective to finish over here. Right, but there is no way to for the player or for the mission maker to let me think about how I'm going to explain that one as well, because setting this up, it was blowing my mind a little bit, and that is why it took me over 25 hours, because there were so many variables to take into account. And this mission, I made it about, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago now, and I haven't touched it again in all that time, so I have to refollow my own logic a little bit here. What was I going to say? Okay, so the reason that you cannot do the same objective 2 times here is because it doesn't work with the same triggers. It gets messed up and it doesn't really work all that well. It's hard to explain, because the way I set it up, it made perfect sense when I set it up, and now that I'm trying to refollow my own logic, it's so hard again. But yeah, just take my word for it that I had to make 2 different objectives being triggered by those 2 different situations. So leaving a guy in Lili or blowing it up and then coming here randomly. I couldn't use the same triggers, and I couldn't use the same task modules because they get triggered by different things. Right? I think that's the most logical way for me to explain it. They get triggered by different things, and I cannot have like the 2 different parameters linked to the same task, because then if I link both of those parameters to the task, it is going to require both of them before the task even gets activated. So I need like 1 parameter per objective, otherwise it's not going to work, if that makes any sense. But once the player does get this this objective assigned, there is another optional objective, which is yeah. So this is actually the trigger that tells if the player leaves the guy behind in Lili, then these triggers are the one that will tell you about the drugs cache being here, right? So it's either this or simply walking into the building is what is going to activate one of these 2 cache tasks, basically. But once it is assigned, there is another side objective that will trigger, which is mining the road, which is over here. So these triggers, there is basically they check for one of the triggers to be activated, and drug objective 4 is a trigger that should be activated no matter which task gets activated over here. So yeah, once that activates, there will be a countdown of 180 seconds, and then it will give you the objective to mine the road and ambush the QRF. Right, so that's the objective over here, and this one is a little bit more basic. It only has the 1 trigger, and it will check to see if there's any kind of bomb inside of the trigger area. Right, and it is quite a long bit of code. But once you place something down, a mine or a time bomb, like what's the word for that? It's not time bomb, but it is one of the explosives you can trigger by remote, basically. Then the objective will trigger, and it will be, or the objective will be finished. Right, that's the succeeded one over there for this task. Set task state is assigned over here, so that's once the trigger goes off, then it will be assigned automatically, which is what happens for all of these objectives. They will once they get triggered, they will be assigned automatically after a few seconds. Right. So that's one of the optional side objectives. There is a little area over here as well where there are some guys chilling out by the beach. It's not an objective, but there is still a response for it when you kill all 3 of them, which is I think if the player gets spotted, then all of them will join each other, so they will form a group, and they can start to move around instead of just standing there and taking bullets. But if everybody is dead, then there will be a little a marker will be made visible on the map, and this squad leader will say, "Not such a great day at the beach after all, huh?" So that's just a little bit of fluff. It doesn't really do anything except like dress up the world a bit more and making the player kind of like, I hope that impresses the player with like all the little random things that can go on. You know, like if he just happens to find these these guys by accident and he shoots all of them, and then this little thing happens, like it's a pretty small chance, right? And I have another thing over here in the woods somewhere. Let's see. Because there's a little trail through the jungle over here, and if you follow the trail, you will eventually walk through this area here, and you will have another message that says, "Man, a holiday here would be nice, you know, if it wasn't for the syndicate." This is another place that the player might never find. He might never walk through here, but if he does, I hope that's like a little bit of extra attention to detail that will impress the player and really start to enjoy the mission more and more. And another thing that's quite cool is this farm area over here. There's a few guys in the farm that like this guy on the water tower, there's a guy in the building walking around, and then there's a guy patrolling the fields over here. And if you shoot all of them, another thing will be triggered. Let's see, farm clear, farm 1, farm detect. So if the player sees any enemies inside of the farm area, you get a message that says, "Looks like the cartel occupied this farm as well." A marker will be placed or made visible that shows you that there's enemies in this location. Then looks like it was just a small guard crew. This actually, yeah, it's the other way around. So farm 2, this will trigger first, I think, or one of these things. One of these triggers checks for the life status of these 3 guys walking around in this area, and then this will activate and says, farm is clear, looks like it was only a few of them, blah blah blah. And then you would think that's it, right? But no, it's not. There's actually a little other area over here that calls for reinforcements, and this is let's see, patrol from 1, 2, 3. So this looks for P1 being in this area, inside the trigger area, and P1 is the name of one of the units in a long-range patrol. Then it also checks for trigger activated leave man 4, which means I left a guy behind in Lili at the radio station to check in on enemy communication, and trigger activated farm 1. And farm 1 is the trigger that checks for all of these guys being dead. So if these 3 parameters are not activated, you will never get the message below, which is, "Boss, it seems the syndicate patrol found the dead bodies at the farm. They know something is up." Right? You will never hear about it. It will still happen, but you will never hear about it unless you leave someone behind in Lili. Right? And what happens is they find the dead bodies, they know something is up, and they're going to call for reinforcements, which is the next one. Fuck, they've called in reinforcements. They will be reinforcing the main objective now. And then this one is basically only checking. Oh yeah, this is the one. It only checks to see if everyone is dead at the farm, and if P1 is in this list, and that will call the reinforcements. And then this one only lets the player know about it if the player actually left someone behind in Lili. Right, and the reinforcements that will show up at the main objective over here, they are, let's see, past Yannicka somewhere, they are in Cerebu. There's not a whole lot of guys, I think. Let's have a look. Yeah, so it's just 4 guys, but it's 4 more guys you would have to deal with at the main objective, which makes things harder when you attack the final objective. Right, but this only gets activated, like those reinforcements only get called if both all the enemy soldiers in the farm are dead, and if the long-range patrol that starts over at the mortar emplacement gets there. So I think, yeah, this is P1 over here. So this guy, with his buddies, he has quite a long walking distance. Like, he follows the road past here, all the way up there, over here, and then goes up to the farm. So, and then he goes all the way back as well, and he just keeps going back and forth like that. And the player might encounter them and kill them all, and if the player kills all of those guys, those reinforcements in Cerberus, something like that, they will never get called. Right? So it's another little random element to the mission that might or might not happen depending on how you play. One of the other side objectives is this is one of the objectives that is there from the very start, which is that you might find a good sniping position here. What the player does not know, however, is that this area is occupied, and so this has the 2 little different tasks, task groups as well, that checks to see if either the player or one of these tasks, it gets created automatically because let's see, one of these things is linked to, yeah, okay, so this is the trigger area that gets linked. So if the player moves through this area and he left someone behind in Lai, you will get a hint about enemy soldiers being here. Okay. If the player blew up the cache or simply did not attack Lai or anything like that, like, the player has to have left behind a soldier in Lai for this objective or for these triggers to activate. But if this trigger activates, it will tell you that there are soldiers on this outpost and you have to be careful, right? And it will trigger a new objective that says kill all of these guys here, which is also an optional objective, like clear out the sniper perch. You don't have to do it, but if you do, you can climb onto this tower, kill this dude, take a sniper rifle and take some pot shots at the final objective, right? And the other objective, it's the same objective, but it can get triggered twice, and this one basically checks to see if let's see, if this, check out the sniper perch. So this is the objective that will be there from the very start, and if the player walks into this base without knowing that there are enemy soldiers here, he will find that this task, the original task of checking out the sniper perch, it will get cancelled, and a new task will be created that says clear out the sniper perch, which is the same objective as the one that was hinted at through the radio if you left someone behind in Lai. But now, because you didn't leave anyone behind in Lai, it gets triggered only if the player walks over here and sees independent units walking around in this area. Alright, so as you can see, it gets a little bit complex. And then let's see, then there are a few oh yeah, so these are the occupied triggers. So like, you see enemy soldiers in this area, it's like, oh shit, it's occupied. And then finally there is perch clear 1 and 2, which both basically make sure that the objective to clear out the sniper perch gets finished up. But this one, perch clear, is one of the objectives that gets triggered either by leaving a guy in Lai, or the other one that finishes the one that happens when you basically walk into these guys at random, right? So yeah. Oh crap, I did not want to do that. I didn't go very far, so that's fine. And then there's the mortar objective over here as well, which also has like the 2 different possibilities. Like, you can find this place randomly and it will create a task for that, or you can be told by radio if you leave someone behind in Lai, and you will have a task for that as well. And so you get the little mortar clear 1 and 2 triggers as well, so they each do their own different thing. Let's see, 2B, 2C, yeah, so mortar clear 1, all clear, good, now let's put that mortar to use. And then save game as well after that, 5 seconds later I think. So this trigger only activates if you got told about this place by radio. The other one, however, is a little bit different. So, mortar clear 2 is all clear. I can't believe these assholes got their hands on a mortar. What's next? And that is, let's see, there is a radio, or, let's see, one of these mortars spotted, yeah. So, hey, look at that, another Syndicate outpost. That is finding this place by random. Or finding this place randomly, then this trigger allows that to happen. You will get an objective. But this is the mortar hint by radio, so this is also something that it takes 700 seconds after you leave someone behind in Lai, and after 700 seconds this hint will be played. Sarge, I've heard Syndicate chatter indicating they have at some point in the past captured a mortar, and then you will get this objective. But if you find this place randomly, these tasks will be activated by just seeing that there's independent forces in this area. Right, and if you find them randomly and you kill everyone, then you have mortar clear 2, all clear. I can't believe these assholes got their hands on a mortar. And then, let's see, there is 2B. It will be useful though. And a save game again. And then there's another trigger over here that checks to see if the player is in mortar 1. And if the player gets inside of the mortar, it says, just 3 explosive shells left, better make it count. So that the player knows exactly how many explosive shells you can actually fire at the final objective. Let's see, what else is there? There is the QRF, of course. So the QRF gets called if you blow up the drugs cache. And if the QRF drives past this trigger over here, and you left someone behind in Lai, you will get a radio hint about it as well. Boss, the big plume of smoke is working. The Syndicate have dispatched the QRF to check it out. But if you found the drugs cache randomly, and you did not leave anyone behind in Lai, you will never know about the QRF heading your way. Because, yeah, nobody's talking to you about it. Right? It makes sense, right? So, yeah, I think that's pretty close to talking about everything there is to do in this mission. There is some other things as well. For example, we have a sniper up on the radio tower over here. And I put a trigger over here as well. So, if the player does actually see that anybody is in this area, then you will see, or you will get a message that says sniper on the satellite tower. Because this is not a place that people are going to look. Right? And I saw on my Steam Workshop page for this mission that one of these guys, he was at somewhere over here at the farm or something, and he got shot at by a sniper and he could never find him. And he thought that the sniper just took a few pot shots and then moved away out of view, but that probably never happened. I think it was this guy actually taking a few shots at him and then losing line of sight, and eventually at some point he got killed, probably. But all of these things, like, they make for quite a few cool things that can happen. All of these things, they kind of play into each other. So if you blow up the drugs cache, they will call the QRF. You can mine the road to ambush the QRF if you actually left someone in Lai to receive the hint that the QRF might be coming. Otherwise, the QRF will just show up and it might blow you to hell. Then the farm, you know, you can call for more reinforcements at the final objective if you kill everyone and the long-range patrol bumps into the dead bodies over here. The mortar, the sniper position, those can be nice ways to kind of clear out your final objective a little bit. And like this farm as well, there's a firefight that can happen, and if you go inside, there is another box of painkillers over here. There's a box of painkillers at the sniper position, I think, in one of these houses, probably this one over here. Let's see. Let's move inside. Yeah, so there's another box of painkillers there, and you can place as many of these painkillers as you want, as long as you put in this little bit of code there. And all of these, they work with the same game logic, so you don't have to repeat the game logic there. But yeah, that's a very quick behind-the-scenes look at one of the most complex missions that I've ever made. It made my brain hurt quite a bit, actually, to make this mission. Like, there were so many parameters and so many things that I had to take into account, because all of these objectives, they play into each other most of the time, that it was really hard for me to keep track of it all. Oh, actually, there is one other thing I need to talk about. There is the reinforcement system that I made. Because in the first edition of this mission that I released, I had a completely different system put in place to have the player get some reinforcements if everyone in this team got killed. The problem with that system, however, was that there were 3 different situations in which those reinforcements should have been called. And one of them is when everyone in your team gets killed except for the guy that you can leave behind in Lili, because the guy you leave behind in Lili is actually kind of invincible, because he needs to be. If that guy gets killed, then I cannot make anyone leave behind or stay behind in Lili. So there was a situation where either all the players could get killed, or I mean all the players' soldiers could get killed. After he took Lili and blew up the comm station, that's when the soldier that you could leave behind becomes vulnerable again. He could have another situation where you decided to ignore Lili, go on to other objectives first, like you could go to the sniper perch and the mortar objective and just completely leave Lili alone, which means that everyone in the team except for the guy you could have left behind could have died, so you will be alone with a guy called Armstrong, I think. So that's the second situation. And finally, you could have taken Lili and left someone behind and still got everyone else in the team killed, which means somebody was still alive in Lili. And I needed to have triggers and objectives for those reinforcements to show up for all of those 3 different situations, and it was such a mindfuck. It was so hard to make it work. I tried so many different things and it just wasn't reliable, or not reliable enough, and it was so hard. It was so hard. It was just that in the end I just scrapped it completely, but I still wanted the player to be able to have some reinforcements, but I needed to find a way to make it more simple. So I went to Yanaka over here, and there is another long-range patrol moving through this area that you might run into on the long way. So these guys, they follow this road, they go up here, up here, up here, and then they go down. But yeah, the new system actually has only 2 different situations, and it works like this. You can have everyone in your team, including the guy that you could have left behind in Lili, dead, or you could have left one guy in Lili behind and then got everybody else killed. So that's a little bit more simple. So it's also this is in Dutch, but it says reinforcements without Scout 1 being alive, and this is calling reinforcements with Scout 1 being alive in Lili, right? So that's a little bit more simple, and all of these triggers, they're basically conversations between me and headquarters. So this is like, oh god, it's just you and me, Armstrong, we need to call for reinforcements. The other one is, oh god, everyone's dead, I'm all alone. Right? And then the other ones are basically the same. It's like, Papa Bear, this is Sergeant Loken, I'm sorry, but I need backup, I'm all alone. Actually, I'm down to 1 man, I need some backup over. So these ones are actually still different from each other, but everything behind that should be the same. Sergeant Loken, this is Papa Bear, listen up, we have some contacts within the local police force. There's a lot of corruption inside the Tanoan police, blah blah blah, etc, etc. And then finally, one of these tasks will be assigned based on which group of triggers gets activated. And then when the player shows up here, he can walk up to these police officers and they will join him. Right, and so that's basically these objectives here. So it's link up 1, player in this list and trigger activated, player reinforcement 1, or player in this list and trigger activated, player reinforcement 2. So it can activate depending on, doesn't matter which group of triggers got activated here. It can work with both of those. I only needed 1 trigger for that. Alright, and then you have the squad leader saying, Honey Badger, I'm Sergeant Loken, blah blah blah. And then this is more of the conversation that's happening as well. But yeah, I think I still have the old system set up as well, so I can show you that as well. So I'll show you that in a bit. Alright, so I'm back. I've loaded up my original mission with the original reinforcement system. And as you can see, Lili looks quite a bit differently. We have the 3 different setups over here. So this is getting reinforcements with Scout 1 still alive after I've left him behind in Lai. This is getting reinforcements without Scout 1 being alive. Scout 1 is the guy that basically, that's the guy that gets left behind in Lai. So if everyone is dead, then this set of triggers gets called, and then finally you can get reinforcements without Lai being taken in the first place. And in which case, let's see, it should be the second one over here. Nope, third one. It says, Roger that, but I need you to take Lai first. It is the only place we can safely insert another team, HQ out. And so the reinforcements that were being called in, they were on an island back here. Let's see. So there's a few different things over here as well. There is, these are the reinforcements that were being flown in. So we have the guy in the helicopter, or the pilot. 2 pilots actually, and then the 4 guys that were the same kind of soldiers that we are. The what are they called again? CTRG soldiers, right? So they would get in by default, and then once one of those triggers were, once one of those groups of triggers were activated, then these guys would fly over, and they would get out in Lai. And we'll get back to that in a second. Let's see, what is this? This is music for the radios, and this is to kill Armstrong, which is the guy that you can leave behind in Lai. I'm not entirely sure why I had this set up again. Doesn't seem to be. Oh yeah, once Scout 1 dies, then I had I have no idea why I had this. I'm pretty sure there was a. Yeah, one of these guys is Armstrong, I think, and it was S1. Yeah, so S1. That's a guy. This is like it's weird. I didn't have to do this, I think, but this is Armstrong instead of like the character over there. So if that guy died that I could have left behind, and this guy gets killed as well. Yeah, I remember now why I did this, because the thing that I use is like set group ID. It means that everyone inside of the group gets the same name. So everyone in my group would be called Sergeant Loken. So I needed someone different for Sergeant Armstrong, or Soldier Private Armstrong, after he gets left in Lai, basically. So that's why I have this guy over here. And if that guy dies, and this guy dies as well. I'm not sure why he has to die anymore. I'm pretty sure there was a sound logic for it. But anyway, these guys, they fly over to Lai. Then they would get out. They would walk to the center of town. And that's where things get even more complicated. And this was quite a bit of a mindfuck. Right, so this is like linking up with the reinforcements, with Scout 1 still being alive. There's the link up without Scout 1 being alive, and then linking up with people after Lai was taken, which I think, yeah, Lai would have been taken with Scout 1 still being alive, because he was invincible until you take it. And then there's a few more different conversations that can happen. So with Scout 1 still being alive, let's see. Yeah, so if he was still alive and he was watching the comms of the enemy communications, then in this case, once I get reinforcements, then he would not want to be left behind anymore. Right, so then he says, hey man, you're not fucking leaving me behind again, I'm coming with you. And so after that happens, let's see, Scout 1 can be damaged again, so he can be killed. He joins the player. And then a bunch of different triggers get deactivated. Like all of the hints that he could have given me, those triggers are deactivated by that. And then finally the game is saved. And then with Scout 1 being alive, that's all only the reinforcements joining the player. And then other times, link up after Lai is taken. The reinforcements join the player. Then you could still make a choice to leave behind Armstrong. But hey man, you're not fucking leaving me behind. I'm coming with you. In this case, it's not you're not leaving me behind again. It's just you're not leaving me behind. I'm coming with you. And then he gets the ability to be damaged back, and then all the other triggers get deactivated again, and then the game gets saved again. But for some reason, I don't know exactly why, I could not figure it out. This setup did not work properly, right? And so all of these tasks are all link up with the reinforcements, right? So this is link up, this is link up, and then finally this is link up as well, because each group of these triggers, they needed their own objective to trigger, for the same reason that I explained over at the drugs cache, basically. Yeah, this was a complete mindfuck. It wasn't working the way it was, and it was really hard to test as well, because to test this, I needed to test it without Lili being taken, I needed it to be tested with Lili being taken, I needed it to be tested with Lili being taken with the comp station being blown up, or with Armstrong being left behind, and it was just so time consuming. It was not possible to do it anymore. So that's why I decided to get rid of this entire setup and to go with a much simpler version with the police forces over in Yanaka, which of course in this version are not there. Alright, so the last thing that remains to do is to have a look at the missions folder and see what is inside there. Right, so we're in my mission folder, and it's not very complicated actually. There is the sound and music folder, so all the sounds are in here, which are quite a few, as you can see. I have a few different actors that are doing this as well. It wasn't just me. We have some music, which is from like I said, it's from Rising Storm, the Red Orchestra 2 expansion. Then you have your basic mission file, which shows what is inside the mission, all the items that are being used and stuff. So CBA, ArmA free structures, like everything that says A3 in front of it is vanilla stuff. CBA is a mod, which many people will know. Then Eden Objects is another mod that not a lot of people will know, but which is required by this mission. It is basically all the beds, all the lockers, and all that stuff that are placed throughout my mission. And those are the only two mods that are being used. It's CBA, Eden Objects, and then there's a bunch of other information about each individual unit, and it's not something you have to look at. Then there's the briefing file, the description file that gives you all the basic information, loading screen, loading information, overview screen, or overview picture, the different kinds of endings that you could have. Now, in my case, I've only got the one ending. All the sounds that I made are being listed here as well, as I explained in my tutorial video. My init file should be a little bit more, it's also very basic actually, so it's only calling for the briefing.sqf to be executed, and then it sets a bunch of markers to 0, or the alpha is set to 0, so they are invisible, and then they can be made visible again with triggers in the mission itself. Right? There's a list of all the voiceovers that I have. There's a load screen as well, and then finally there's time change, which I don't think is actually being used anymore, but this is what I try to use to make 12 hour, or like make, no, actually this is what should have said 12 hours later in the info text, so there should be like a little bit of text to the bottom right of the screen or something like that that says it is now 12 hours later, but for some reason it doesn't actually work, I think. And it doesn't really matter if it didn't, but maybe that's something I should look into for a small patch, but really it's not a big deal. There's just something wrong in the code. But this is being called if you try to play the game at night. Anyway, that's it. I hope you found this informative or interesting at least. Maybe you learned a thing or two, I'm not sure. But yeah, let me know what you think. I might do a few more videos like this if people like them. So yeah, rate up if you liked it. Let me know in the comments below. And I'll see you guys for the next videos.